My name is Savannah Mercer. I am 29 years old, and the night my father laughed in my face after I got fired, I learned there are some families that only love you when your life looks expensive enough to brag about. He leaned back in his chair like he had been waiting years for that moment, grinned over his whiskey, and said, "You have always been all talk, no results." My mother did not correct him. She just kept arranging flowers for the party they were throwing 3 days later for my younger brother and his unpaid internship at a luxury real estate firm in Raleigh, the kind of internship rich parents treat like a Nobel Prize if it gives them something shiny to tell neighbors. When I asked if I could at least come to the backyard dinner, my mother looked at me like I had asked to be seated at my own funeral. "Why?" she said. "So you can sulk in the corner and remind everyone what failure looks like." My brother laughed before I could answer. "I earned this. You earned nothing but pity and shame." I did not cry. That would have made them feel powerful. I just smiled and said, "You will regret this celebration one day." My father actually clapped once, slow and mocking, like I had performed a little drama for his entertainment. 5 months later, they were standing on the same porch they once told me to get off, crying into the dark, calling me every night because the one daughter they had called useless was the only reason their lives had still been working. Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out, tell me what time it is for you right now, and where you are watching from. I am curious to see how far this story will travel. People always assume revenge begins with rage, but mine started with inventory. Not emotional inventory, functional inventory. Because the truth was ugly and simple. I had not just been living in that house after losing my job. I had been quietly holding together almost every moving piece my family was too proud or too careless to notice. For 2 years, while I worked remotely as a brand strategist for a mid-sized hospitality design studio, I also became the unofficial operations brain behind my father's landscaping business, Mercer Grounds. It looked glamorous from the outside. High-end patios, outdoor kitchens, custom stonework, lighting systems, water features for gated communities, and oversized homes where clients said things like curated outdoor living and estate continuity with perfectly straight faces. My father liked being called a craftsman and a businessman. What he really was, at least by the time I moved back in after my layoff, was a talented frontman standing on top of a mountain of administrative labor he did not understand. That labor was me. I rebuilt his scheduling system after he nearly lost 3 clients in 1 week. I color-coded crew routes, negotiated delivery windows, flagged permit deadlines, chased unpaid invoices, wrote client apology emails, corrected estimates, updated insurance documents, and quietly created a private file on every high-maintenance customer so the crews would know who demanded extra edging, who tipped well, who lied to get discounts, and who needed to be called before noon because they treated any afternoon call like a personal insult. My mother handled the books badly and called it old-school discipline. My brother took drone footage for the company Instagram, wore clean boots for staged photos, and spoke about scaling the brand as if he had invented grass. I was the person who kept their promises from collapsing under them. But because none of what I did involved standing in a driveway with a clipboard and a crew behind me, it was invisible. And in families like mine, invisible work becomes proof you are worthless. My father worshipped visible strain, mud on your jeans, sunburn on your neck, loud phone calls, things that looked like labor to other men. If you worked on a laptop, he thought you were pretending. If your value could not be shown off to his golfing clients, he dismissed it as fluff. He used that word often. Fluff. Branding was fluff. Client retention strategy was fluff. Workflow optimization was fluff. Even after Mercer Grounds doubled its repeat business in under a year because I standardized follow-ups and fixed their estimate system, he still told people he had figured out a few things himself. The worst part was not even his arrogance. It was how eager my mother was to help him rewrite reality. She loved narratives that made the family look disciplined, resilient, superior. To her, my brother was ambitious because ambition photographs well. I was unstable because failure stains the wallpaper. So when I got fired after my company lost a major hotel account and eliminated half my team, no one in my house asked how I was holding up. My father asked whether I had finally learned that real jobs cannot be done in sweatpants. My mother asked if I planned to mope all summer. My brother asked if I was going to put being downsized on LinkedIn as a personal growth pivot. That was the tone in the house. Not concern, not disappointment, contempt, dressed as tough love. Looking back, the backyard party was only the public version of what they had already been doing privately. They just got careless enough to say it with witnesses around, and maybe that was their mistake. Because humiliation changes shape when other people hear it. It stops being pain you can explain away. It becomes evidence. That week, I stopped thinking like a daughter and started thinking like the only competent operator in a failing system. What happens to a machine when the person who knows all the hidden switches walks away? The party happened on a Saturday night, 2 days after my mother told me I would ruin the mood by showing my face. I should have left the house then, but a part of me stayed because I wanted to know how far they would go if they no longer had to pretend. I did not have to wait long. By 4 in the afternoon, the backyard looked like a curated Southern magazine spread. Rental string lights, white linen on folding tables disguised with draping, tall glass drink dispensers filled with lemon slices and mint. My mother moved from arrangement to arrangement in a navy dress she only wore when she wanted people to think our family lived at a higher tax bracket than it did. My brother practiced his story near the grill like an actor rehearsing a monologue. He had landed an unpaid internship through the father of a girl he dated for 6 weeks in college, but in my parents' retelling, he had been selected after fierce competition because of his drive. Drive. That word nearly made me laugh. He had no driver's license for a year because he forgot to renew it twice. He missed deadlines, lost receipts, and once sent a client's rendering deck to the wrong email list and blamed a server glitch. But he was charming, photogenic, and male in a family that mistook confidence for competence. Around 6, guests started arriving. Couples from church, 2 long-term clients, my mother's tennis friend, one of my father's suppliers. I stayed in my room at first, then came downstairs because hunger beat dignity, and I thought I could at least grab something from the kitchen without being seen. I had just reached for a plate when my father stepped into the doorway and said, not quietly, "I thought we covered this. We are not doing one of your moods tonight." A few people in the hall turned. I said I was only getting food. My mother appeared beside him with that tight smile she used when she wanted to stab someone politely. Then eat, after they leave. I am not having this celebration turned into an awkward little pity vigil. My brother followed, drink in hand, enjoying himself too much to hide it. "If you come out there looking like that," he said, "everyone will spend the night wondering if Dad had to drag his unemployed daughter through another breakdown." He paused, looked me over, then added, "Actually, maybe that would help me. Nothing makes success pop like a side-by-side before and after." Several people laughed nervously. Nervously, but they laughed. That is something people love to pretend did not happen in family stories. They always say, "No one knew. No one understood." No, some people understand perfectly well. They just decide comfort matters more than decency. I asked my father if he was seriously throwing me out of a party in the yard of the house where I was sleeping in the guest room because they had told me to save money while I job searched. He shrugged and said, "Then stop acting like a guest and start acting useful." I still remember the heat in my face. Not because I was about to cry, because I was suddenly, almost beautifully calm. Have you ever been insulted so precisely that your grief becomes arithmetic? My mother crossed her arms and said, "Why do you insist on making everything about you? Your brother finally has momentum and you cannot stand it." I looked at my brother. He smirked exactly the way the hook promised he would, with the lazy cruelty of someone who has never once feared being unloved in his own home. "I earned this," he said. "You earned nothing but pity and shame." And that was the moment. Not when they barred me from the yard, not when the guests stared, not even when my father opened the back door with a little theatrical flourish like he was inviting me to exit a stage. The moment was hearing my brother say shame so easily, as if he had borrowed my father's mouth. I smiled because anger would have fed them. I said, "You will regret this celebration one day." Then I walked out through the side gate, across the driveway, and sat in my car without turning it on. From there, I could hear the clink of glasses and the fake laughter and a toast my father gave about discipline, grit, and knowing which children would rise when life got hard. Do you know what I did next? I opened the Notes app on my phone and started listing every process, password, contact, deadline, estimate template, supplier code, and client preference living only in my head or on my laptop. Not because I wanted revenge in some dramatic movie way, because I wanted clarity. If the family believed I was nothing, then I needed to measure exactly how much nothing they were standing on. By midnight, I had 73 items. By 2 in the morning, I had 91. At 3:20, I wrote one line at the top of the note and underlined it twice. "They do not miss me. They outsource themselves through me." The next morning, I packed 2 suitcases, one plastic storage bin, my laptop, and the little basil plant I had been keeping alive on the kitchen window because no one else watered it. My mother saw me by the front door and asked if this was another stunt. My father shouted from the den that I would be back the second I realized the world did not reward self-pity. I told them not to worry. I was finally going to do something useful. Then I left. No screaming, no shattered plates, no speech about respect. That is another thing people misunderstand about revenge. Sometimes the most dangerous exit is the quiet one, because no one hears the structure cracking until long after the person carrying the weight is gone. For the first 3 weeks after I left, my family thought they were winning. I know that because my mother posted filtered photos of the backyard from the party with captions about new seasons and proud milestones, and my brother uploaded slick little reels from job sites pretending Mercer Grounds was entering a bold expansion phase. My father told relatives I had moved out to prove a point and would settle down once real life humbled me. He said that to anyone willing to listen, because men like him think confidence can substitute for logistics. I rented a furnished room above a retired widow's garage on the south side of town, 10 minutes from the highway and 20 minutes from the Mercer house, though I might as well have been on another planet. The room was small, clean, and so quiet it startled me. The woman renting it to me was named Mrs. Bell, and on the second day, she asked what I actually did for work. Not what happened to me, not why I was there. What I did. I told her the truth. Brand systems, operations cleanup, client communication, process design, digital workflow rescue. She blinked once and said, "So you make messy businesses stop embarrassing themselves." It was the first accurate description of my value I had heard in years. I almost cried from the shock of being seen correctly. I spent my days applying for jobs, freelancing where I could, and rebuilding my portfolio with actual case study language instead of the polite ghost work I had done behind companies too vain to admit they needed help. One of those gigs came through a former client named Nolan Reed, who had gone independent after leaving a boutique events agency in Charlotte. He needed someone to rescue a half-collapsing operation stack for a growing home services franchise. He remembered me because 2 years earlier I had quietly fixed a campaign timeline disaster in under 48 hours and never bragged about it. He paid me enough to breathe, then referred me to someone else, and then someone else. Not glamorous work, not cinematic, just enough to start moving again. Meanwhile, the calls from home began, and their evolution told me everything. At first, it was practical confusion disguised as annoyance. My mother texted, "Do you know where the updated tax binder is?" Then, "We cannot open the new vendor file. Did you move things around?" My father called and left a message saying a client was claiming they had been promised a revised stone sample list and asking what ridiculous filing system I had used this time. My brother sent, "Hey, random question. What login did you use for the drone insurance renewal thing? No apology, no concern. Not one. Are you okay?" Every contact from them proved the line in my notes app had been right. They did not miss me. They were trying to restart a machine without the manual. So I ignored them. At first, that felt petty. Then I reminded myself of the kitchen doorway, the laughter, the word shame spoken like a verdict. Silence stopped feeling cruel after that. It started feeling accurate. By the second month, little fractures began surfacing in places only I could have predicted. My father forgot a municipal permit deadline for a retaining wall project in an upscale development. The crew showed up, got shut down, and the client posted about it in the private neighborhood forum where rich homeowners trade recommendations and social executions with equal enthusiasm. My mother accidentally sent an outdated invoice to a client who had already paid a deposit, then called him twice demanding money he did not owe, which led to an email threatening legal review. My brother booked a drone shoot at the same time as an estimate meeting with one of our highest lifetime value customers because he thought the crew calendar synced automatically. It did not. It only did when I synced it. I heard about all of this indirectly through Nolan, through old contacts, through the little invisible town network where vendors, contractors, stylists, and service owners all gossip once money gets involved. The delicious part was that no single disaster looked catastrophic alone. That is how real collapse works. Not fireworks, erosion, delayed callbacks, wrong mulch deliveries, unsent follow-ups, a missed birthday arrangement for a client's wife that I used to quietly remind my father about, because wealthy people love to feel remembered. A proposal sent without updated pricing. A crew dispatched to the wrong entrance of a gated estate because no one had checked the notes field where I had once written in all caps, "Use service, gate off Laurel, front access will get you turned away." Mistakes stacked. Reputation thinned. Tempers shortened. By month 3, my uncle called to say your parents are under pressure and you should not enjoy this too much. I asked him whether he had also called when my father humiliated me in the kitchen. He said families say things in the heat of the moment. I asked whether he had heard my mother call me what failure looks like. Silence. Then the usual script. They did not mean it like that. I almost laughed. What other way is there to mean a sentence like that? During the 4th month, I landed a longer contract helping a regional property staging firm overhaul their client intake, communication scripts, vendor coordination, and rebooking system. The owner was sharp, demanding, and impossible to impress, which meant I liked her immediately. She gave me results to chase instead of pity to perform around. I stopped checking my family's social media. I started sleeping through the night. But the calls kept coming, more frequent now, later in the evening, carrying a new note underneath the irritation. Fear. Once, near 11:30, my father left a voicemail that lasted 19 seconds. "Just call me back. This is not funny anymore." That line sat in my phone like a medal. Not because I enjoyed hearing him unravel, because for the first time in my life, he had said what he always believed without dressing it up. My role was to solve his problems. If I was not doing that, I was being difficult. The thing he had not understood yet was that the world had finally given me something his house never did. Distance enough to decide that my usefulness belonged to me. The real collapse started with the Bell account. Though at the time my family did not understand why losing one client would frighten them more than losing 3 smaller jobs. Victoria Bell was not just wealthy. She was connected in the way that matters inside affluent suburbs: garden clubs, charity boards, private school committees, architectural review circles, all those neat little kingdoms where women with excellent teeth and very soft voices determine which businesses thrive and which never get invited back. Her estate had been one of Mercer Grounds' showpieces for almost 3 years, and that was no accident. I had built that relationship from scratch after a miserable first consultation where my father talked over her, ignored her sightline concerns, and almost lost the bid by calling one of her ideas fussy. I stayed up until 2 that night, rewriting the proposal to sound bespoke, elegant, and responsive instead of expensive and defensive. I added a phased maintenance structure, a visual service calendar, and one deeply strategic sentence about preserving the property's event readiness year-round. She signed the next morning. After that, I remembered every preference she had ever mentioned: which hydrangeas she hated, which evenings she hosted, which gate the staff used, which son had allergies to certain pollens, which annual party mattered most to her image. My family thought they had won her because my father knew stone and my brother took pretty aerial footage. No, they had kept her because I treated reputation like horticulture. You maintain it constantly or it dies in one dry week. Toward the end of month 4, Victoria hosted a fundraising luncheon on her lawn for a hospital board circle. That event had always been a red-flagged date in my system because nothing could go wrong the week before it. No noisy equipment after Tuesday, no invoice confusion, no late pruning, no substitute crew. She did not want service, she wanted anticipation. My family forgot, or rather, they never knew. They trimmed too aggressively, delivered the wrong ceramic planters, and failed to replace a lighting transformer that had been flagged in the notes 3 months earlier. On the morning of the luncheon, 2 path lights were dead. A hedge line looked ragged on one side, and one of the imported pots my mother insisted on buying to save time had a hairline crack visible from the terrace steps. Victoria called my father. He argued. That was mistake 1. Then my mother emailed a tone-deaf apology from the generic company address with the wrong event name in the second paragraph. Mistake 2. Then my brother, in a fit of startup genius, posted drone footage from the property anyway because the lawn still looked expensive from above. Victoria saw it before guests arrived. Mistake 3. By evening, she had terminated the account, demanded partial reimbursement, and made it known within her circle that Mercer Grounds had become disorganized, arrogant, and unreliable. In another family, that might have stayed a business problem. In mine, it became blood. Because Victoria Bell had quietly referred 6 top-tier clients over the years, and 3 of them were already on edge from recent mistakes. Once she turned, they started reevaluating everything. 2 paused renewals. 1 canceled a new hardscape consultation. A builder who used Mercer Grounds for premium model homes asked for documentation my father could not find because I had built the file structure and he had mocked it instead of learning it. Suddenly, the company that had looked solid from the street was gasping behind the fence. That was when the nightly calls shifted from irritated to desperate. My mother started leaving voicemails with my full first and middle name, the tone women use when they want guilt to do what love no longer can. Savannah Claire, please call home. Your father is under a lot of stress. This is still your family. My brother stopped pretending he was above it. He sent messages at 1 in the morning asking where certain client notes were, whether I still had archived estimates, whether I could just talk him through how I used to handle premium account touchpoints. He actually wrote that phrase. Premium account touchpoints. The same brother who used to call my work fluff was now choking on my vocabulary. The satisfaction of that should have felt simple. It did not. Because every message also carried a shadow I hated admitting. They still were not sorry about me. They were sorry about consequences. The distinction matters. It is the moral spine of stories like this. A parent can cry and still not repent. A sibling can panic and still not understand. People mistake distress for transformation all the time. I refused to. Then came the dinner invitation. Not from my father. He was too proud. From my mother, who texted that she wanted to talk calmly and clear the air over a meal at one of my favorite places. That phrase almost made me put my phone down. My favorite place. She had spent years rolling her eyes at that little Italian restaurant because she thought handmade pasta portions were too small for the price. Now suddenly it was a bridge. I went. Not because I missed them, but because revenge stories become thin if the protagonist never tests the emotional ground. I wanted to know whether there was any person underneath the panic. My mother arrived first in pearl earrings and controlled concern. My father came 2 minutes later, looking older around the mouth. My brother arrived last, phone in hand, already irritated. No one hugged me. No one said I looked well. They opened with weather, traffic, nonsense. Then my father set his menu down and got to the point. We need access to the client systems you built. Need, not ask, not apologize, need. I watched him as I took a sip of water. His face was tight with humiliation, but beneath that was the same old entitlement, polished thinner now by fear. I said, "You invited me to dinner for passwords." My mother flinched, like I had been rude. "We invited you because this has gone on long enough," she said. "We all said things we regret." Everyone was emotional. That line almost impressed me. The sheer efficiency of it. 3 months of contempt boiled down to everyone was emotional. I asked her which part she regretted most. Calling me failure in the kitchen. Letting guests laugh. Telling people I was unstable after I left. She went still. My brother jumped in because he always mistook speed for intelligence. Are we seriously doing a courtroom thing right now? We are under pressure. Dad could lose the Bell referral chain completely. If you have any loyalty at all, you will help. Loyalty. There it was. The sacred word families weaponize when love has become inconvenient. I looked at him and asked the one question I had saved for exactly this kind of moment. If I had come here tonight, broke, unemployed, and unable to help you, would any of you still be sitting at this table? No one answered. That silence was the only honest thing any of them gave me all year. My father finally muttered that I was making this personal. I leaned forward and said, "It became personal when you laughed. It became permanent when you made me the family joke." Then I stood, paid for my own drink, and left them with the check. My phone rang twice before I got to my car. I did not answer. On the drive home I felt shaky, but not from guilt. From confirmation. Sometimes closure is not forgiveness. Sometimes closure is hearing the same people fail one final test so cleanly that your doubt dies on the spot. By month 5, my life had become something I would not have believed possible back in the guest room at my parents' house. Not glamorous, not cinematic, but mine. Nolan brought me onto a more permanent consulting track with 2 home service firms and a staging company, and one of those owners referred me to a boutique outdoor design studio trying to modernize their entire client experience. The irony was almost too sharp. I went from being mocked as decorative and impractical to being paid specifically because I understood how beautiful businesses fail when their systems are ugly. I rented a small townhouse on the edge of an older neighborhood with mature trees and uneven sidewalks. The kind of place young families and careful divorcees move into when they want peace more than prestige. It was not next door to my parents, but it was inside the same zip code, close enough that word would travel, which mattered in a town like ours where information reaches front porches faster than weather warnings. The move that left them crying was not one dramatic act. It was 3 precise decisions made within 10 days. First, I accepted an offer from a regional competitor of Mercer Grounds, a company called Alder Ridge Outdoor, to become Director of Client Systems and Brand Operations. They were not trying to steal my father's clients. They simply understood something he never did. A service business at the upper end lives or dies by trust choreography. They wanted someone who could map every fragile step between first impression and repeat contract. I could do that in my sleep. Second, I allowed my name to appear publicly on their relaunch materials, not in a flashy way, but clearly enough that people in town would connect it. Savannah Mercer joins Alder Ridge Outdoor to lead premium client experience and operations strategy. Third, and this was the piece that truly broke my family, I helped Alder Ridge secure a pilot beautification partnership with the Homeowners Association in the very development where my parents had once been praised for their work. It was all legal, all ethical, all earned. But in small-town family politics, nothing wounds more deeply than watching the person you dismissed become the reason others stop calling you first. The first night the announcement circulated, my mother called 6 times. My father called twice. My brother sent a message that just said, "Wow, so that is what this is really about." I stared at that one for a long time because it revealed him perfectly. Even now, he could not imagine I had built something for myself. He had to believe I had built it at them. People like him can understand retaliation more easily than independence. The calls intensified after Alder Ridge quietly won 2 consultations that had originally been intended for Mercer Grounds. Not because I stole them, because clients talk. They ask who is organized, who follows through, who remembers preferences, who makes them feel safe spending large amounts of money. And now the answer to those questions no longer pointed to my father's company. One evening, just after 10, there was a knock at my townhouse door. I knew before I opened it who would be there. My parents on the porch. My mother already crying. My father not crying yet, which somehow made him look worse. Behind them, parked at the curb, my brother sat in the passenger seat staring straight ahead as if he had been dragged there against his will but could not bring himself to leave. For one disorienting second, I saw us all from outside, the daughter at the threshold, the parents aging under porch light, the son pretending not to witness the collapse of a hierarchy he had benefited from. My mother reached for my arm and I stepped back before she could touch me. "Savannah, please," she said. "Your father cannot sleep. We are losing people. Everyone thinks you hate us." I almost asked why that part mattered most. What everyone thought, but I did not have the energy. My father cleared his throat and spoke like each word had to scrape past glass. "We need you." There it was, the line from the hook, stripped of performance and made pitiful by necessity. "Please, we need you more than ever. Not we were wrong, not we hurt you. Need again, always, need." I asked them both a question I had rehearsed in my head for weeks without realizing it. When I lost my job, what exactly did you think would happen to me if you pushed me out? They said nothing. My mother cried harder. My father looked at the porch boards. I kept going because sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is force people to look directly at the thought they never finished. Did you imagine I would become stronger? Did you think I would find better people? Or were you comfortable with the possibility that I might completely break, as long as it happened somewhere you did not have to see? My brother got out of the car then, suddenly furious because shame turns to anger fastest in people who have never learned to bear it. "This is unbelievable," he said. "They are here trying. He used the same word people always use when consequences finally reach the guilty. I looked at him and said, "You smiled when Dad laughed at me. You called me shame in front of strangers. Do not talk to me about trying." That landed. He actually looked away first. My father then did something I had once spent years wishing for. He apologized. Not beautifully, not fully, but undeniably. He said he had gone too far, that he had been angry at the world, at money, at how things were changing, and that I had become the easiest place to put that anger. The truth of it stung more than the apology soothed, because I believed him. I believed that I had been the easiest place to put their frustration. That was the whole crime. I was safe to damage because they assumed I would keep loving them anyway. My mother started telling me families should not destroy each other over pride. I said, "Then you should have remembered that in your kitchen." My father asked whether I would at least consult for a few weeks, just to stabilize the business, train someone, help them avoid losing everything they had built. I looked past him into the dark street, then back at the house lights reflected in their car windows. And I realized the porch was doing to them exactly what the kitchen had once done to me. It had become a stage where power changed hands. The difference was I did not enjoy it as much as they expected. That is another truth revenge audiences feel deeply when it is written well. Satisfaction is real, but it is rarely pure. Sometimes the victory tastes like old smoke. I told them no, calmly, no speeches, no insults, just no. My mother covered her mouth. My father nodded once, like a man hearing a sentence he already knew was coming. They stayed on the porch for another minute as if the ending might rewrite itself if they remained still enough. Then they turned away. My mother was crying openly by then. My father put one hand on her back, and suddenly they looked less like villains and more like two people who had spent so long grading their children that they never noticed they were being measured too. That image haunted me after they left. Not enough to change my answer, but enough to make the win feel human instead of cheap. They kept calling every night for almost 3 weeks after the porch visit, though the shape of the calls changed once they understood I would not rescue them. At first, the messages were practical. Questions about archived proposals, irrigation maps, client anniversaries, permit logs. Then they became emotional in the clumsy, belated way people try emotion when strategy fails. My mother left a voicemail saying the house felt wrong now and that she still turned to tell me little things when she was cooking. I listened to that one twice because it was the nearest she had come to missing me instead of my function. My father sent a text at 12:14 a.m. that simply read, "I know I was harder on you than Tyler." That was perhaps the largest truth he had ever typed in his life, and it still managed to feel smaller than the damage it described. My brother took longest to crack. Pride made him cruel before it made him reflective. But eventually he called from a number I did not recognize, and when I answered out of annoyance, there was a long silence before he spoke. He said the company was bleeding. 2 crews had quit after pay disputes and scheduling chaos. One foreman had accepted a better offer from a competitor. A builder who once handed my father steady premium work had shifted new developments elsewhere. Their church friends still smiled in public, but people had started talking about disorder, missed commitments, and how strange it was that the daughter no one mentioned anymore seemed suddenly connected to every business in town that was getting its act together. Then he said something that stayed with me for days. "I did not know you were doing all that. Not I was wrong. Not I am sorry. I did not know." It was honest, and in its own way it was an indictment. He had lived beside my labor and never bothered to see it. That is how a lot of family cruelty works in America, especially in houses where image and hierarchy matter. Not constant screaming, selective blindness, convenient underestimation. You keep someone small in your mind so you can keep yourself large. I asked him whether he wanted absolution or information. He said he did not know. That was the first adult answer I had ever heard from him. Months later, I ran into my mother at a grocery store on a rainy Thursday evening. She looked thinner, slower, softer around the eyes. We stood near the herbs and prepared meals like strangers forced into a rehearsal of old roles. Neither of us could play convincingly anymore. She asked if I was happy. I said I was peaceful. She nodded as though that distinction hurt. Then she told me the business had survived but smaller. My father had sold 2 trucks, cut expansion plans, and taken on a partner with better operations discipline because, as she put it, he finally understands he cannot just bark and expect systems to appear. Tyler had taken a salaried role elsewhere after his internship network failed to turn into the glittering future my parents had promised him. Apparently, the world had been less moved by his confidence than our dining room had been. I did not gloat. I did not need to. The life I had built was already answer enough. She asked if I thought there would ever be a way back. Not back into the business, back into the family. That question deserves honesty in stories like this, because audiences can smell fake healing from a mile away. The truthful answer was not never. It was not yet, and not cheaply. I told her some doors do not reopen because people knock when they are lonely. They reopen when the house on the other side has been rebuilt. She cried a little, there between rosemary and plastic clamshell salads, and I hated that I still loved her enough to feel something. But love is not permission. Love is not access. Love is not a contract that obligates the injured to become useful on command. In the months that followed, contact thinned. Holidays were awkward, negotiated, brief. I saw my father once at a charity auction tied to one of Alder Ridge's development partners. He looked at me across the room with a complicated expression I will probably spend years translating. Regret? Yes. Pride? Maybe. Loss? Definitely. He did not come over. He did not need to. The room itself was saying enough. People greeted me by name. They asked about strategy, client journeys, growth, and design systems. All the words he had once mocked as fluff. He watched other men listen to me. He watched women with checkbooks and influence ask for my card. He watched, I think, the funeral of the story he had told himself about who mattered in his family. That was the real ending. Not my parents crying on my porch. Not the late-night calls. Not even the no I gave them when they needed me most. The real ending was this. The daughter they had treated like an embarrassment stopped auditioning for worth inside a house that only understood utility once it was gone. I used to think justice would feel loud. I thought it would roar through me, hot and clean, and leave no doubt behind. Instead, it arrived quietly, in bills I paid myself, in sleep that came easily, in work that carried my name without apology, in the strange freedom of knowing I could answer my phone or let it ring and either choice belonged to me. So yes, months later, they called me every night. They stood crying on the porch they once pushed me from. They said they needed me more than ever. And maybe they did. But by then, I had finally learned the lesson they spent years trying to teach me in the ugliest possible way. Need is not the same as love. And once you know the difference, some doors close so softly the people outside never even hear the lock turn.